Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So in my last video I discussed Counterspell and how it's going to be affected in Monsters of the Multiverse, and I looked at basically monster design. Now I want to start looking at, we have 33 races in Monsters of the Multiverse. These are all reprints. They've all been in sources previous to this, but there have been significant changes to a lot of these races. So I want to start talking about this because this is going to have a major impact on character design moving forward, and obviously I do a lot of that on this channel. Now, as I mentioned in my previous video, I have been lent a copy of Monsters of the Multiverse by one of my patrons, David W. Skibbons. So a special thank you to David for lending me his copy of the book, because I'm not buying the gift set. That's the only way this book is available right now. But in May, this book will be available for individual purchase. It'll also be available on D&D Beyond, so I will be getting it through those sources at that time, and David is going to get his book back. So thanks again, David, for letting me use your book. Let's talk a little bit about races. I just wanted to kind of do an overview today. Today I'd like to thank the following patrons: David W. Skibbons, Dewey Cheatham and Howe, DM Michael 7000, Douglas Reynolds, Drew Terry, Eric Harvey, Eric Wasserman, FBK05, Gishlife, Glenn Wilson, Gakumaru, Hendry, Hoerby, Ian Johnson, I'm Not K, Jay Gemmel, Jack Harper, James Makla, James Sprague, James Thomas, Jason Klein, Jeff Williams, Jad Zan, John Matera, and Jonathan Lexi. Thank you all so much for your support. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is, because this is one of the big questions coming out, is are we going to have to use these races instead of the old races? Because, like I said, there's a lot of changes, and not all the changes are improvements. So a lot of players are going to want to access those old races to get some of those old features that are gone now. This I typed out. This was from the introduction to this book. This book is a revision of content that originally appeared in Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. It also includes revised options from Princes of the Apocalypse, Eberron Rising from the Last War, and Mythic Odysseys of Theros. Now, the Turtle's in this book, so I think they missed that it also includes content from the Turtle package. Chapter 1, Fantastical Races, presents over 30 race options for player characters, complementing the options in the Player's Handbook and other D&D books. These races debuted elsewhere and appear altogether for the first time here, each of them revised to fit into the current state of the game. Many of these races are based on creatures that appear in the Monster Manual or the bestiary of this book. Consult with your DM to see whether an option here is appropriate for your campaign. Now, so are these intended to be replacements? Well, I think they are, because they refer to them as revisions. So these aren't variants, these are revisions. So I believe the intent is that these are going to be the versions for these races moving forward. That, of course, doesn't mean that you have to use them. You have your old books. Feel free to keep using those, and if everyone at your table wants to use those, then why not use those? But I think the intention is these will be replacements. Now, if I'm the DM, I would say that I will either use these races or I will use the old races. But what I probably wouldn't do is mix and match, because then it's going to be difficult for players when they're coming up with ideas for their characters, and they, maybe there's a feature from a creature that they think, well, that'd work really nicely on this build, and then they have to go look at a document to determine if they're using the old version of that race or the new version of that race, because you aren't going to memorize it on 33 different races. So my recommendation would be, and certainly the way I'll be doing it, is I will either use this or I will use the old versions, but I probably won't mix and match. Now, I did a lot of typing. I've basically typed a whole bunch of stuff over the last 2 days. So if you notice any spelling errors or grammatical errors, I have no interest in hearing about them, but go ahead and comment if you like. But there probably will be, because I did a lot of typing. In this video, I'm just going to kind of overview the changes we've seen to races, and then I'm going to do some more specific videos about those changes in future videos. There are a few universal changes, though. Every race's ability scores Now you will either get a +2 and a +1, and you can place them wherever you like, or 3 +1s you can place wherever you like. So set ability scores are gone. And even if you use Tasha's Customize Your Origin that allowed you to move stats around, you didn't have the choice of the +2 and the +1 or the 3 +1s. So I would say there's a mechanical improvement there pretty much universally. I mean, there were a couple of the more recent races that use that system, but for the old races, I'd say this is just straight out better. All races receive common as a language, plus one additional language that you and your DM agree are appropriate for your character. The point here is that, okay, so let's say you're playing a Deep Gnome. Probably you're going to know Gnomish, right? But what if you were a Deep Gnome raised by elves? Well, then maybe you wouldn't know Gnomish. Maybe you'd know Elvish instead. We now have that option. And they're very big on that in this book. So they really want to get rid of anything that's cultural. So if there is something that was taught to members of this race and it appears as a feature, they change it to make sure that it's not treated as something you're taught anymore. It tends to be more like you gain this mystically, or it's supernatural, or it's innate. So taught skills are gone. All races have walking speeds of 30 feet or more. So some races still have more than 30 feet movement, but if you had 25-foot movement rate before, it's now 30 feet. Sunlight sensitivity is gone from all player character races in this book. You still have Drow with sunlight sensitivity, but if you are playing any of the races from this book, you will not have sunlight sensitivity anymore. There are no sub-races in this book. There are a lot of races that used to be sub-races. They're now presented either as an individual race or there's like a feature option within the race. Any feature that used to be tied to intelligence, wisdom, or charisma now allows you to choose which score to use when you select the race. I actually noticed one exception to this, but it is almost universal. And the one exception, it really doesn't matter. And I wouldn't be surprised if they errata it anyways. I bet you it's an oversight. But anyways, that is almost a universal now. Any spells gained through the race can now be cast with your own spell slots in addition to the once free per long rest. Not a surprise, we already have seen that kind of thing happen with more recent feats. So to see it happen with the races, no big shock. And finally, and this one I found the most interesting, and I looked, there are no longer any features recovered through short rests. Every feature that was recovered through short rest before has been altered, so it only is recovered on long rests. Often we can use it more often, but it is only recovered on long rest. There's nothing that comes back on a short rest anymore. Now, being that they're talking about changing stuff so that it fits the current state of the game, I think this gives us a little peek under the hood. Because we have a new player's handbook that will be coming out in 2024. It won't be a 6th edition. It'll be like a 5.5 or a 5th edition enhanced or something like that. But it's basically going to be 5th edition with revisions. This kind of gives me a pretty big hint as to what we're going to see in that book. They're getting rid of features and traits that recover on short rests. I'm really curious to see what they do with something like the Warlock. Are they going to still have spells come back on a short rest? I kind of think maybe not. Maybe they'll have some other way. Maybe they'll just use regular spell slots. Or maybe they'll have some unique variation that is only recovered on long rests but is different than spell slots. I'm not sure, but what I do strongly suspect is that if short rests remain at all in the revised edition, it doesn't look like features and traits are going to be coming back on short rest. They'll just be like for hit dice expenditure. That's probably a good move. I really like that because I found from table to table, you get massively different way of playing. And sometimes you get lots of short rests. Sometimes you get no short rests. And this massively changes the balance of classes because short rest recovering mechanics, if you get lots of short rests, you become really good. And if you don't, you're not. So that's going to standardize that. So I think it's a good thing. But yeah, that's kind of the peek under the hood there is that short rest recovery mechanics seem to be completely gone. So those are some universals. Let's look at the changes that we see in the races. So as I mentioned, lots of typing. So again, you might see some errors, but I was pretty careful on like the actual features that have been changed in this book. So if you see white printing, that's kind of the way it used to be, and the red printing discusses the changes. So here's the Aarakocra. So we're still a humanoid, we're still medium. Our speed used to be walking speed of 25 feet. It has now been changed to 30 feet. Flight, you used to have a flying speed of 50 feet and you couldn't wear medium or heavy armor. You still can't wear medium or heavy armor, but now your flight speed is equal to your walking speed. Now, I just want to make a clarification because I heard that the flight speed was going to be 30. That's not entirely true. It starts with a base of 30, but just keep in mind that there's a number of things that increase your walking speed but wouldn't necessarily increase your flight speed. Those now will increase your flight speed. So although we have a lower flight speed to begin with, we do have more ways to improve it. Talons. So there's kind of a theme here that we're going to see with all natural attacks. And that is, first off, they don't refer to them as natural weapons ever. They're only referred to as unarmed strikes. And second, they all do a d6 damage. The type of damage can change, but they're always a d6 damage. Now, what I find interesting here is since they're referred to as unarmed strikes, that means if you were a monk and you were an Aarakocra, you could use your talons as your unarmed strikes, like monk weapon kind of thing. So you would be doing d6 damage with your unarmed strikes if you use your talons, which I assume you would use. So that's a little boost to a monk, but you know what? I'll take any boost I can get. And then we get a new feature called Wind Caller. Starting at 3rd level, you can cast Gust of Wind, and you can cast it once per long rest, and you can use your spell slots, and you can pick your spellcasting ability, and that's universal. We're going to see this kind of feature over and over again. Once per long rest, then we can use spell slots, and we choose our ability score. So the Aarakocra is still really, really, really powerful because concentration free flight is super powerful, even if it's using your walking speed. And there are some boosts here. The walking speed is higher, the talons are better, and we're getting a free spell. Aasimar. Okay, so there are no sub-races for Aasimar anymore. So first off, we can be medium or small, so that's a change. Second, we no longer have a sub-race. Otherwise, speed is the same, celestial resistance, necrotic, and radiant damage resistance. As far as I know, this is the only creature in the game that has resistance to 2 damage types, so that's really nice. Dark Vision remains the same. Healing Hands has changed a bit. So it used to be you used an action, and you could heal a creature number of hit points equal to your level. And now it's a number of d4s equal to your proficiency bonus. So how this is different, basically at lower levels, you will be healing more damage than you used to. At higher levels, it's going to even out somewhat. Lightbearer remains the same. And yeah, I double checked it. Lightbearer remains the same. It says Charisma is your spellcasting ability for Lightbearer. Makes no difference mechanically, right? Because it's the light spell, so we don't care what ability score we're using. But I just thought it was interesting that this is the one feature, and it's a spell, that you cannot choose a different ability score. And again, it really makes no mechanical difference, but I wouldn't be surprised if they errata it anyway. We'll see. Then we get Celestial Revelation. So when you reach 3rd level, you choose one of the revelation options below. Thereafter, you can use a bonus action to unleash the celestial energy within yourself, gaining the following benefits of that revelation. Your transformation lasts for 1 minute or until you end it as a bonus action. Once you transform using your revelation below, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So these now require a bonus action to activate. It used to be an action, so that is a huge, huge boost. And the extra damage now equals your proficiency bonus rather than your level. So that is a reduction in power. So on one hand, we're getting a big boost, and on the other hand, we're getting a reduction. Overall, I think it's better. I would rather have the bonus action to activate because it's only a minute. So you either give up your first turn of combat, or you can use your bonus action now, and you can take an action on your first round of combat. Frankly, I'd rather have the action. Now, there's some minor changes to the actual features beyond just having a reduction in damage and bonus action activate. So Necrotic Shroud, one of the big things there is that it used to have friendly fire. Friendly fire has been removed from Necrotic Shroud. Now you are only frightening your enemies. And of course, your damage bonus is equal to your proficiency bonus. Radiant Soul. The flying speed is now specified as equal to your walking speed. And the damage equals your proficiency bonus, of course. And then radiant consumption. What's different here is that you used to do damage to yourself with radiant consumption. Not anymore. Now you only do damage to people around you, so that's a nice boost. And that damage used to be half your level. It is now your proficiency bonus as well. Which of these is the best? Radiant Soul is the best because flight is really good. That's always been the case, and it is still the case. Bugbear. Okay, so the Bugbear is a goblinoid, just like goblins and hobgoblins. And all goblins now have a Fey ancestry. So basically in the text they talk about how they're from like the Fey realms, and therefore they retain some of the features from there. Specifically, the Bugbear is getting Fey ancestry. You have advantage on saving throws you make to avoid or end the charm condition on yourself, and goblins and hobgoblins are going to get this same feature. The other thing that changes is sneaky. This gives you proficiency in the stealth skill, but in addition, without squeezing, you can move through and stop in a space large enough for a small creature. Now, if our Bugbear is medium sized, that makes sense, I guess. There's maybe hunching over or whatever. What seems odd to me is that they would say large enough for a small creature rather than large enough for a creature of one size smaller than your Bugbear, because if our Bugbear is a Rune Knight, we might be large-sized. With an enlarged reduce on top of that, we could be huge-sized. If we're a Moon Druid, we could be any size at all. Why on earth would they just say small size here? I think the intention is one size smaller. That's certainly the way I would run it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with some pretty silly stuff. Here's the big change on Bugbear, and this is a major buff, I think. Surprise attack. So this is what it used to be. If you surprise a creature and hit it with an attack on your first turn in combat, that attack deals an extra 2d6 damage, and you can use this trait only once per combat. That was a really minor thing, almost never came up. Now, if you hit a creature with an attack roll, the creature takes an extra 2d6 damage if it hasn't taken a turn yet in the current combat. Let's say we're a Gloomstalker and a fighter, so like a multi-class, and we win initiative. Then we get our attack action. We get an additional attack because we're a Gloomstalker. Maybe we have a bonus action attack through Crossbow Expert or something. Then we're going to do an action surge, take another attack action, get a bunch more attacks. All of those would get the additional 2d6 damage. That could be a lot of damage. This is something I might actually make a build around. It's that good. What about centaurs? All right, so we're Fey as we were before. Size is medium as we were before. I've always figured that's really weird. I guess there's a mechanical reason they don't want any player characters to be large as a base size. But it is odd to me that a horse is large size and a centaur is medium sized. Though the artwork here, I gotta say, this looks much more like a medium sized centaur. So yeah, they've done artwork that kind of supports the size change. Speed, walking speed is 40 feet as it was before. Charge doesn't change. Equine build doesn't change. Hooves have the standard where they're not referred to as weapons, and they do a d6 plus your strength modifier now. And Survivor is now called Natural Affinity. It says now your Fey connection to nature gives you an intuitive connection to the natural world, and that's why you get a skill. So you get a skill and you can choose it from this list. So it actually really hasn't changed mechanically, just thematically. So centaurs are almost identical to the way they were before. Their hooves do a little bit more damage. Changeling. All right, so Changeling, you're still a Fey. Now you can choose to be medium or small, and your walking speed is still 30 feet. Changeling instincts have just changed thematically. It says thanks to your connection to the Fey realm, and they add performance as another option. That makes sense. I understand why a Changeling would have performance as a possibility on that list, though it's probably not what I would select, but I understand why they've added it. Then we have Shape Changer. So a little bit of a boost here, because before you would retain your initial size. Now you can choose a size between medium and small. And they've added a little bit of wording here. I'm not sure why. You can't duplicate the appearance of a creature you've never seen. They now say an individual you've never seen. So I'm not sure why a creature wouldn't have been an individual, but anyway, a little bit of a wording change there. Moving on to the Deep Gnome. So we are now no longer a subrace. It is just a race. You are a humanoid. You're also considered a gnome for any prerequisite or effect that requires you to be a gnome. Your size is small. Your walking speed is now 30 feet, so that's up from 25. Superior dark vision, just going to point out they call it dark vision now. But you still get the 120 feet. So if you see dark vision there, don't panic. 120-foot dark vision is what you get. Then we get an additional feature. This is just added on. Gift of the Svirfneblin. Starting at 3rd level, you can cast a Disguise Self spell with this trait. Starting at 5th level, you can also cast a non-detection spell with it without requiring a material component. And then the standard spell stuff. So yeah, a couple spells. That's good. Gnome Cunning is now called Gnomish Magic Resistance. And it used to be saving throws against magic. Now it is saving throws against spells. Anytime we have advantage on saving throws against magic or magical effects, it has now been reduced to just spells. This is going to make it probably easier to identify which things you're going to have advantage against, but it is probably also a smaller list of things. Stone Camouflage has been changed to Svirfneblin Camouflage. It has nothing to do with stones anymore. It used to be super circumstantial. It's now just, I think, a better ability. You have advantage on dexterity stealth checks to hide in rocky terrain is the old feature. The new feature is when you make a dexterity stealth check, you can make the check with advantage. You can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So they've removed the circumstantiality of it, but they've limited the number of times you can use it. Still, your proficiency bonus per long rest, that's probably enough. I don't see that being a big problem. So I think it is a better feature now. Duergar also used to be a sub-race, now is its own race. You are a humanoid, you're also considered a dwarf for any prerequisite or effect that requires you to be a dwarf. Still medium-sized. Speed has been increased from 25 feet to 30 feet. However, your speed is not reduced by wearing heavy armor is removed. That is no longer the case. Heavy armor affects Duergar just like anybody else. Superior dark vision, like with the Deep Gnome, is just called dark vision, but it's still 120 feet. And Duergar magic. The restriction on Duergar magic that those spells can only be cast on yourself remains. However, the restriction that enlarge reduce could only be used to enlarge yourself is removed. So you can use enlarge reduce to become smaller if you choose to, and we get the other standard spell changes, so spell slots and casting stat and all that. Dwarven Resilience remains. It is the same as it has always been. Psionic Fortitude. You have advantage on saving throws you make to avoid or end the charmed or stunned condition on yourself. That is new. And a bunch of stuff is gone. Duergar Resilience is gone. Sunlight Sensitivity is gone. Combat Training gone. Tool Proficiency gone. Stone Cutting gone. Some of these were good. Some of these were bad. Some of these were kind of incidental. Well, don't have to worry about any of them anymore. They don't exist. Eladrin. So these were 4 sub-races of elf, and now it is 1 race. You are a humanoid. You're also considered an elf for any prerequisite or effect that requires you to be an elf. Size unchanged, speed unchanged, dark vision unchanged. Fey Ancestry, just a little bit of change in wording, but mechanically the same thing. You have advantage on saving throws you make to avoid or end the charm condition on yourself. I guess that's actually a boost, because if you read it rules as written before, it was against being charmed, not ending the charm condition, though I think most DMs probably ran it both ways regardless. Now it's clear it's whether you're making the save to avoid it or you're making the save to end it. And sleep immunity is not listed here anymore, but it's not gone. They just moved it into the trance feature. Phase Step, so this was a recovered on short rest feature. It is now recovered on a long rest, but we can use it more. We can use it proficiency bonus per long rest. This is kind of the standard. So when we see features that used to be recovered on a short rest, they're now proficiency bonus times per long rest. The DC on any features of your phase step used to always be based on charisma. Now we can choose to have it charisma, intelligence, or wisdom. The actual phase steps, autumn, winter, spring, and summer, almost no changes. The only change is summer. Creatures used to take fire damage equal to your charisma modifier. Now it's equal to your proficiency bonus. And keen senses, they still get those. Now trance, it's changed the wording a bit, and there's an additional feature tacked on here. So let's take a look at trance. The way trance works now, you don't need to sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. You can finish a long rest in 4 hours if you spend those hours in a trance-like meditation during which you retain consciousness. whenever you finish this trance, you can change your season. So we can change the kind of Aladdin we are with a long rest. You also gain 2 proficiencies that you don't have, each one with a weapon or tool of your choice selected from the player's handbook. So we're going to get a weapon and tool proficiency, or 2 weapons or 2 tools, and we can change them with a long rest. And then it specifies you definitely didn't learn these. These have been gained mystically. So trance is a little bit different, and the wording is a little bit different, but mostly it's the same. 4-hour long rest, and you're using a trance to get it. Next up is the Fairy. So the Fairy was in While Beyond the Witchlight, and because that is a recent publication, the races there apparently are already following what they want. So the Fairy is unchanged. It's identical to the printing in While Beyond the Witchlight. I should also point out, Fairies are really good. Just like Aarakocra are really good. Unlimited Flight is just really, really powerful. And here we have Unlimited Flight, and we're going to get some spells. So yeah, it's just really good. Next up, we got the Firbolg. Okay, so the changes here. Firbolg magic may have gotten a little bit worse. So we can still cast Detect Magic and Disguise Self. We can use any casting stat, not just Wisdom. But these used to be short rest recovered features. And we're not getting them proficiency bonus per long rest. We're casting them once per long rest, and then we can use our spell slots. So the standard stuff for casting spells. Then Hidden Step allowed you to turn invisible once per short rest. This one we can now use a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest. Powerful Build didn't change. Speech of Beast and Leaf used to say you have the ability to communicate in a limited manner with beasts and plants. Now it says with beasts, plants, and vegetation. Why did they add "and vegetation"? I don't get it. Vegetation is just a collective term for plants, so not sure what they think they're adding there or clarifying there. Some of this stuff, I think they were like aiming for a certain word count, maybe. You will see again later some words that were added that don't really do anything, and this is one of those. Okay, so the Genasi. So these used to be sub-races of a single race called Genasi. They're now all individual races. Genasi. All right, so the Genasi, I should say, did well here. So we're still humanoid. We can choose medium or small. Our walking speed has been increased from 30 feet to 35 feet. Unending breath remains the same. Mingle with the wind is a little bit different. You used to get levitate. You could cast it once per day. Now you have shocking grasp. You have featherfall at 3rd level, and you have levitate at 5th level, and all the standard stuff for spell casting regarding spell slots and casting stats. So that's quite a bit extra. I mean, casting levitate from level 1 was kind of nice, but by the time you get to level 5, we're getting quite a bit more here. And then we're going to add 3 more things. We're going to get dark vision. Didn't have dark vision before, now we do. Going to get lightning resistance. Now this makes all kinds of sense to me. Like, why didn't the Air Genasi have lightning resistance to begin with? So I'm glad to see it here. And on Unending Breath, you can hold your breath indefinitely when you're not incapacitated. So 3 entirely new features. Like I said, they did pretty well. Earth Genasi. Again, we can choose medium or small now. We have dark vision added. We didn't have it before. Earthwalk. They specified a bit that you can only use it if you are using your walking speed on the ground or floor. It seems like an odd thing to add, because it's when you move across difficult terrain made of earth or stone, you don't use extra movement. I don't know how much difficult terrain made of earth or stone isn't on the ground or a floor. But anyway, if it is, you can't use Earthwalk anymore. Merge with Stone used to be Pass Without Trace once per day. So now we are going to get Pass Without Trace, but not till 5th level. And we get this. This is kind of cool. You know the Blade Ward cantrip. You can cast it as normal. And you can also cast it as a bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, regaining all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now, Blade Ward is just a cantrip, but nevertheless, we're casting it quickened, basically, a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus. These kinds of features are the ones I look at and I go, I wonder how I could work that into a build, because it seems pretty cool to me. Then we got the Fire Genasi. Again, medium or small. Speed is the same. They still get dark vision. They were the one that got dark vision to begin with. And fire resistance remains. Reach to the blaze is a little bit different. First off, we get the standard stuff, so, casting with slots and ability scores. But we're also going to add the Flame Blade spell at level 5. I'm not a huge fan of the Flame Blade spell, but I'll take it for free. So there you go. Reach the Blaze a little bit better. Water Genasi. All right, so once again, we can be medium or small. Walking speed is 30 feet. And they've now included that you can swim at the same speed. You can walk under speed. Dark vision has been added. Acid resistance remains. Amphibious remains. Call to the Wave has changed. So it used to say you know the Shape Water cantrip. The Shape Water cantrip is not in the player's handbook. I'm sure that's why they changed it. So we're going to know the Acid Splash cantrip instead. Then the part where you can cast the Create or Destroy Water spell, that remains. But we're also going to add a Water Walk spell at level 5. So that's a nice addition. And all the standard stuff with slots and casting stats. Githyanki. Okay, so this one breaks my heart a bit. The Githyanki took a big hit, in my opinion. Creature type, size, speed all remain the same. Decadent Mastery is gone, but it's kind of replaced through Astral Knowledge. Martial Prodigy is gone, also kind of replaced with Astral Knowledge, with one big exception. So Astral Knowledge, you can mystically access a reservoir of experiences of entities connected to the astral plane. Whenever you finish a long rest, you gain proficiency in one skill of your choice and one weapon or tool of your choice selected from the player's handbook, as you momentarily project your consciousness into the astral plane. These proficiencies last until the end of your next long rest. But Martial Prodigy used to give us proficiency in light and medium armor. We lose that. That really hurts. Then Githyanki Psionics. So basically, we're getting the same spells we used to, except they're giving the standard changes. So the spell slots and the casting stat are now flexible when they weren't before. So that has gotten better. Then we have the Githzerai, and the size, speed are the same. Mental discipline is essentially the same, except they've just changed the wording a bit. Your innate psychic defenses grant you advantage on saving throws you make to end or avoid the charmed and frightened conditions on yourself. Mechanically, again, this is the same, just thematically a little bit different. Psychic resilience. You have resistance to psychic damage. I should mention, too, I think I missed that. The Gith also have psychic resistance. There it is right there. I skipped over it, but they have it. So the Gith got psychic resistance, or the Githyanki, I should say, got psychic resistance, and the Githzerai. Then Githzerai Psionics, just like with the Githyanki, it's the same spells, except we can use our slots, and we can pick our casting stat. This is really nice because the shield spell, if you can just add it to spells known and use your slots on it, it's a nice gain here. Next up, the Goblin. So as with the Bugbear, goblins are now are from the Fey realms. They're not Fey creatures, they're still humanoids, and considered goblinoid for any prerequisite or effect that requires you to be a goblinoid. I'm not aware of any features or effects that require you to be a goblinoid, but this does open the door in the future if they want to do that. It specifies goblins, hobgoblins, and bugbears all qualify. Size is small, speed 30 feet, dark vision remains the same. We get the Fey ancestry, just like the bugbear did. Fury of the Small changed, and it is worse. The extra damage is no longer equal to your level. It's equal to your proficiency bonus, and we use it a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest rather than every short rest. At low levels, that's not going to make a big difference. At high levels, we're going to see that the damage is going to reduce significantly, assuming that you're making at least one short rest. If you're not making any short rests, then it's maybe not a reduction. But assuming you make at least some short rests, this is less powerful. And Nimble Escape remains. So the goblins actually got a little bit worse in this book. I still think they're good. I mean, if I'm going to play a goblin, I'm probably kind of playing it for Nimble Escape. That, to me, is the big feature, and it remains the same. So I don't think goblins are bad now. But yeah, you get Fey Ancestry, I guess, which is an advantage, and Fury of the Small got worse. So I don't know. Maybe they're about the same as they were before. Goliaths now got better mechanically, but worse conceptually, I think. I'll talk about that. Anyway, creature types, the same, still medium size, still 30 feet movement. Natural athlete used to be, you have proficiency in the athletic skill. It is now called, this just breaks my heart, Little Giant. That's what it's called, Little Giant. Your Goliath is a little giant. I'm sorry, this just, I don't like it. I don't like the name Little Giant. But you know what? I'll call it something different. Reskinning is free, and it is official as of Tasha. So I don't have to call it Little Giant. But also, our powerful build is worked into Little Giant. So we count as one size larger. We always did, but it used to be a separate feature. Stone's Endurance. So it used to say you can focus yourself to occasionally shrug off injury. Now says you can supernaturally draw an unyielding stone to shrug off harm. Mechanically, a little bit different in that it used to be a short rest feature. It's now a proficiency bonus per long rest. Powerful build now included with Little Giant. And then Mountainborn, they say you have resistance to cold damage. You are also acclimated to high altitude, including elevations above 20,000 feet, even if you've never been to one. And I'm going to read this directly from the book just to make sure I got that right. So it says you have resistance to cold damage. You also naturally acclimate to high altitudes, even if you've never been to one. This includes elevations above 20,000 feet. That's just weird grammar. So high altitude, you wouldn't refer to it as one. So what you would say is even if you've never been that high or been to that altitude. So it's just odd grammar, but I know what they mean. The idea is you don't have to have been Mountainborn to get the feature. All right, moving on. Harengon. So, like with the fairy, no changes. Harengon is identical to before. Rabbit Hop probably could have been revised to be a little more clear because this is one of those features that needed frequently asked questions like a week or two after publishing, and they didn't change it at all. So, I mean, it's the same as it was before. At least we have the answers to those questions. Hobgoblin. All right, so the Hobgoblin is way different now, at least thematically. Mechanically, too. It's actually a really, really big change. So, as with the Goblin and the Bugbear, we're now like from the Feywild. So, Fey Ancestry, which is advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the charm condition on yourself. We also get Fey Gift. You can use this trait to take the help action as a bonus action, and you can do so a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Starting at 3rd level, choose one of the options below each time you take the help action with this trait. So we choose Hospitality. You and the creature you help each gain a number of temporary hit points equal to a d6 plus your proficiency bonus. Or Passage. You and the creature you help each increase your walking speeds by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. Or Spite. Until the start of your next turn, the first time the creature you help hits a target with an attack roll, that target has disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes within the next minute. And I was originally wondering, like, what does this have to do with being a hobgoblin? But if you read the description of hobgoblin now, they describe them as so they're creatures from the Feywild who really like helping things, and they're very helpful and community friendly and all these things. And that's not how I envisioned hobgoblins. I envisioned them before like ancient Roman legionnaires. But now they're, yeah, these super helpful, nice things, I guess. So martial training is gone. That means we're not going to have light armor proficiency anymore. We're not going to have the martial weapon proficiencies anymore. And saving face has been reflavored. So it is no longer, it used to be hobgoblins are careful not to show weakness in front of their allies for fear of losing status. That's gone. So it's now called Fortune of the Many. And it's just the mechanics, except the bonus maximum is +3 rather than +5. And it used to be a short rest recovery, and now it's proficiency bonus per long rest. So yeah, just thematically massive changes to the Hobgoblin, and mechanically as well. So I'm just going to read it from the book here. It says, Hobgoblins trace their origins to the ancient courts of the Feywild, where they first appeared with their goblin and bugbear kin. Many of them were driven from the Feywild by the conquering god Megliobet, I'm sure I got that wrong, who marshaled them as soldiers, but the Fey realm left its mark. Whenever they are in the multiverse, they continue to channel an aspect of the Feywild's rule of reciprocity, which creates a magical bond between the giver and the receiver of a gift. On some worlds, such bonds lead hobgoblins to form communities with deep ties to one another. So they're very friendly and nice. And Look at. I just want to show you the artwork. I couldn't find this online, so this is why I'm on camera. But where are they? There they are. Look how happy he is and friendly. That's just such a nice hobgoblin. And yeah, so our hobgoblins now, they're super nice. Kenku. All right, so you are humanoid size. You can choose medium or small now. So you can be a small Kenku. Walking speed is still 30 feet. Expert forgery is now called expert duplication. Used to say you can duplicate other creatures' handwriting and craftwork. They've changed that. When you copy writing or craftwork produced by yourself or someone else. Now, I have to say again, this just seems like extra wording to me. Like, why don't you just say, when you copy writing or craftwork, you have advantage on any ability checks you make to produce an exact duplicate, because all writing or craftwork is produced by yourself or someone else. I don't see any reason why you have to specify by yourself or anyone else. I guess it's because it used to specify other creatures. So now they're clarifying that you can do it on your own stuff as well. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to do it on your own stuff in the first place. But yeah, it just seems like extra words to me. Then we get Kenku training has changed to Kenku recall. So we used to choose 2 of the following skills. Now, thanks to your supernaturally good memory, you have proficiency in 2 skills of your choice. And we get something extra. Moreover, when you make an ability check using a skill in which you have proficiency, you can give yourself advantage on the check before rolling the d20. Of course, if you give yourself advantage on the check, it's always going to be before you roll the d20. Otherwise, it's not really advantage, it's a reroll. You can give yourself advantage in this way a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This is another feature where I kind of want to look for ways I might use this in combination with other features. Looks pretty interesting to me. And then mimicry. So mimicry used to involve an opposed check. Not anymore. Now it is a check against a set DC. That is DC of 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier. And languages. This is a big one. It used to say, but you can speak only by using your mimicry trait. That was the only way we used to be able to communicate at all. That's gone now, so now we can just speak normally. I like how under mimicry, it used to say you can mimic sounds you've heard. Now it says you can accurately mimic sounds you have heard. And I'm wondering, who is the DM who spurred this change? Like this jerk DM where I'm playing a Kenku, which is already mechanically one of the weakest races in the game, and I want to use one of my only features, mimicry, and, well, your mimicry isn't very accurate. I mean, who wasn't assuming it was accurate to begin with? So yeah, I don't get it. But anyway, it's in there. Now, by Ra, it is accurate. Kobold. Okay, so people, go ahead and boo your screens right now because a lot of people will not be happy with this change. This has probably gotten more conversation online than anything. I've heard lots of people say they're not going to use this book at all because of what they did to the Kobold. Well, the Kobold definitely got changed. So let's take a look and see what happened. All right, so you're still humanoid, you're still small, you still move 30 feet, you still have dark vision. Grovel, cower, and beg is gone, or more likely replaced with Draconic Cry. So grovel, cower, and beg, this is how it used to work. As an action on your turn, you can cower pathetically to distract nearby foes. Until the end of your next turn, your allies gain advantage on attack rolls against enemies within 10 feet of you that can see you. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. So this is now Draconic Cry. It is now a bonus action on our turn, not an action anymore. Of course, we're not cowering pathetically. We're going to let out a cry at our enemies within 10 feet of us. It now lasts until the start of our next turn, and the advantage applies to both you and your allies. And those creatures no longer need to see you, they just need to hear you. So you could do this like if you were invisible, for example. And we can use it a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus, and we regain all expended uses when we finish a long rest. So thematically, I like it less. I kind of like the idea of, kobolds being these cowardly, pathetic creatures. Not anymore. Now they have a Draconic Cry, and why the Draconic Cry provides these advantages, not sure I understand it. But The mechanics are clear enough, and they are a big improvement over Grovel, Cower, and Beg. I'm going to talk about that more. I'm going to come back to it after we talk about the stuff we're all going to hate. Specifically this one, Pack Tactics. So kobolds used to have an advantage on an attack roll against a creature if at least one of your allies is within 5 feet of the creature and the ally isn't incapacitated. This feature is gone. It no longer exists. This was why everyone was playing kobolds, was for Pack Tactics. So removing it is going to get some talk. And yeah, so they got rid of it, and people are not happy about that. Sunlight sensitivity is also gone. So that's a bonus, I guess, right? Sunlight sensitivity is bad. Getting rid of it is good. Then we are going to add another feature, Kobold Legacy. Kobold's connection to dragons can manifest in unpredictable ways in an individual kobold. Choose one of the following legacy options for your kobold. First is craftiness, so you get a skill proficiency. Defiance is the second one. You have advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the frightened condition on yourself. And the third is Draconic Sorcery. You get a cantrip from the sorcerer list. Now, Defiance is weird to me. So not only are kobolds not cowards anymore, but we're actually going to give them a feature where they get advantage against being frightened. So they're actually brave now, or at least a third of them are brave now, which just seems odd to me. It's a really big thematic change for kobolds. But here's the question. Is the kobold a bad race now? Actually, I don't think so. I think the kobold is still a fairly decent race. Yeah, losing Pack Tactics hurts. I mean, it really does. But Draconic Cry is really good. We're going to take a little trip into my D&D Beyond. So we're going to go to Fighter, and we're going to go to Samurai. And the primary feature of the Samurai is right here, Fighting Spirit. Starting at 3rd level, your intensity in battle can shield you and help you strike true. As a bonus action on your turn, you can give yourself advantage on weapon attack rolls until the end of the current turn. When you do so, you gain 5 temporary hit points. The number of temporary hit points increases when you reach certain levels in this class, blah blah blah. You can use this feature 3 times. You regain all expended uses of it when you finish a long rest. Now, I don't think the Samurai is a strong fighter subclass, but this is the primary feature of this subclass. If you're playing a Samurai, it is likely to get Fighting Spirit, because Fighting Spirit is a reliable way to get advantage. It's just extremely limited in use. Draconic Cry, I think, is better than Fighting Spirit by a lot. I think it is way better than Fighting Spirit. First off, we don't have to wait to 3rd level. We can do Draconic Cry at 1st level. You give yourself and your allies advantage on attacks, and they're not limited to weapon attack rolls. So if we're doing an attack roll with a spell, we still get that advantage, and all our allies do. And it lasts longer. Fighting Spirit lasts to the end of your current turn. Draconic Cry lasts until the start of your next turn. So if you are making reaction attacks in between, you would still get the bonuses from Draconic Cry. Now, there's a couple downsides. The 10-foot range, of course, is kind of the big one. And then you're not getting the temporary hit points, which is, I think, a smaller one. But giving advantage to all your allies as well as yourself. And this is going to scale with our level. So Fighting Spirit is 3 times per long rest. This is a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest. So we will, at 5th level, be able to do it just as often, and at higher levels be able to do it more often. So yeah, I think Draconic Cry is a pretty good feature. I mean, getting the primary feature of an entire subclass as a racial feature, that's really good. The other thing I'd point out about Draconic Cry is you could be out in the sunlight, and you can give yourself advantage through Draconic Cry. A regular kobold could cancel out the disadvantage from sunlight sensitivity, but there was no way they could actually get advantage on those checks. So there is a circumstantial benefit here. Not to say that Draconic Cry competes with Pack Tactics. It does not. Maybe you could build around it. Like if you work with your other players and so that they can all take big advantages from Draconic Cry, then maybe it could compete with Pack Tactics. But I think, if we're looking at our characters as an island, Draconic Cry, of course, because of its limited use and its requirement of using a bonus action and its range limit, there's a number of reasons why I think it's not as good as Pack Tactics. Now we're adding Kobold Legacy, but Kobold Legacy is small. It's not a big bonus. But yeah, I think Kobold's still okay because Draconic Cry is really good now. Lizard Folk. Okay, so changes here. First, used to list swimming speed of 30 feet. Now it's equal to our walking speed. I already discussed why that's potentially an advantage. Our bite is now an unarmed strike, and it deals slashing damage instead of piercing damage. Otherwise, it's the same. Cunning Artisan. So this is where you could like build yourself like shields and weapons out of bones and hides of creatures you defeat. That's gone, right? It was obviously something that was cultural, so it doesn't exist anymore. Holding Breath remains the same. Hunter's Lore. Again, this would sound like something that you might have learned. So instead, they call it Nature's Intuition, thanks to your mystical connection to nature. Otherwise, it's the same, except medicine is now also an option. Natural armor is the same. They just specify that your base armor class is AC 13 plus your dexterity modifier rather than just your armor class. So that's just a bit of a clarification. Hungry Jaws is a little different. Used to give you temporary hit points equal to your constitution modifier. Now it's equal to your proficiency bonus. That's, pretty similar. And then it used to be a short rest feature. So of course it's proficiency bonus per long rest. Next up is the Minotaur. And with centaurs and minotaurs, I just want to point out, when I was a kid, I was told they were called centaurs and minotaurs. And that's what I called them most of my life. And then I was corrected that it's centaur and minotaur. And when I go, watch videos and stuff, they always call them centaurs and minotaurs. So I assumed that was right. That's become what I'm used to. But I just wanted to verify, and I went to Google or Google pronunciation, and they say Minotaur and Centaur. So maybe one's an English pronunciation, one's an American pronunciation, but I'm used to Minotaur and Centaur now. That has nothing to do with anything. I just thought it was interesting. So what are the changes? Very, very few changes here. So first off, our horns, they're now just unarmed strikes. Then hammering horns, they just clarify that it's not an actual shove like, a mechanical shove. It's a push. So they call it push instead of shove. Just clarifies it a bit. Imposing presence is gone. That was basically a skill. So, we lose out one skill proficiency. But we get what we probably should have had all along, which is Labyrinthine Recall. You always know which way is north. You have advantage on any wisdom survival check you make to navigate or track. I mean, they're minotaurs, right? If you know the history or the mythology of minotaurs, Labyrinthine Recall just makes a lot of sense. So I'm glad to see it on the Minotaur now. Okay, so orcs. All right, so what changed with orcs? Let's see, size is the same, speed is the same, still have dark vision. Now aggressive, they've changed this a little bit. First off, they call it Adrenaline Rush. You can take the dash action as a bonus action. You can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Whenever you use this trait, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. So aggressive was not a limited feature. You could use it as often as you like. However, it was limited in what it did. It was still a bonus action, but you could move your speed towards an enemy. And now that's not the case. You can move towards your enemy. You can move away from your enemy. You can move wherever you want. So there's a lot more freedom in what we do with that bonus action movement. They've specified that it is the dash action, but it's limited use and it gives you a few temporary hit points. Primal Intuition is gone, so you're going to lose out on 2 skill proficiencies. Powerful Build remains, and they've added Relentless Endurance, which is the same as the half-orc feature. So if you look in your player's handbook, you'll see that half-orcs have Relentless Endurance. If they drop to 0 hit points, they can drop to 1 hit point instead, and they can do that like once per long rest. And it was kind of questionable why orcs didn't get that in the first place, because why would half-orcs get it if neither humans nor orcs have it? So now they've given it to the orc, so that makes more sense now. Next up, we have the Satyr. So you are still Fey, you're still medium, your walking speed is still 35 feet. Your ram is now an unarmed strike, does a d6 damage, used to do a d4. Magic resistance is now just spell resistance. Mirthful Leaps remains the same. And Reveler, they specify as an embodiment of revelry. You have the proficiency in the performance and persuasion skills. So just in case you thought Reveler was a personality trait, you are an embodiment of revelry. Now, I know I'm using a mocking tone here, but in reality, I'm actually think it's a good thing that they are not using personality traits as racial features. Let the player choose the personality of their character. Sea Elf. All right, so once again, was a subrace. Now it's an individual race, but you are still considered an elf. So you can take your elven accuracy with your Sea Elf. Size is medium, base walking speed is 30 feet, and you have a swimming speed equal to your walking speed. Once again, if we increase our walking speed, that increases our swim speed as well. Dark vision remains unchanged. Keen senses remains unchanged. Fey ancestry has the standard wording change that we saw already. Trance has the same wording changes that we saw before, including magic can't put you to sleep. And they've added on, whenever you finish this trance, you can gain 2 proficiencies you don't have, each one with a weapon or tool of your choice selected from the player's handbook. You mystically acquire these proficiencies by drawing them from shared elven memory, and you retain them until you finish your next long rest. So that has been added to trance. Before you had Sea Elf training, that would give you your weapon proficiencies, so those are gone, and that's why I assume they've added weapon and tool proficiencies to trance. Child of the Sea, so the swimming speed is now just included in your movement speed, and is now equal to your walking speed rather than 30 feet, and you can breathe air and water, and now they've added you have resistance to cold damage. And then Friend of the Sea, so they've just kind of clarified the wording here. Aquatic animals have an extraordinary affinity with your people. You can communicate simple ideas to a beast that has a swimming speed. It can understand your words, though you have no special ability to understand it in return. Just a little clarification. Then we have Shatter Kai. So I learned something about Shatter Kai today, or yesterday when I was preparing this video. In fact, it was kind of a shock. And I'm not talking about the new Shatter Kai. I'm talking about the old Shatter Kai. So Shatter Kai used to be a subrace of elf. Now it's a humanoid, but they still count as an elf. Medium size, walking speed 30 feet, blessing of the Raven Queen. So it used to say, as a bonus action, you can magically teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. Once you use this trait, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Now I read that, and I'm like, whoops, I made a little bit of a typing error because it's short or long rest. And then I looked it up, and no, it's always been a long rest recovery. I'm not sure why I thought it was short or long rest. Maybe I was confusing it with the Eladrin abilities because it's so similar to Phase Step that I probably just assumed it was the same. But no, it's always been a long rest feature. So there's an improvement now. We can use it equal to our proficiency bonus. We regain all expended uses when we finish a long rest. So now it is the same as Phase Step. But yeah, it wasn't before. Shatter Kai kind of sucked before. I didn't realize that. So the Fey Ancestry has the standard wording changes. Sleep immunity is under Trance now instead of Fey Ancestry. Trance has the standard wording changes. Mechanically, they are basically the same. And like with the Eladrin, we can add a weapon or tool proficiency of our choice, actually 2 proficiencies of weapons or tools when we complete a trance, and we can change them after a long rest. Okay, so next up is the Shifter. So the Shifter used to have 4 subraces. Now those are chosen as like a feature within the race. So we begin with creature type, remains the same. You're still humanoid. Size, you're still medium. Speed, your walking speed is 30 feet. So the way it used to work is you picked your subrace. It told you what your ability score bonuses were going to be. It told you 1 skill proficiency you were going to get, and then it gave you a bonus that you got when you used your shifting feature. So now we're just choosing the bonus you get when you choose your shifting feature. So the ability score bonuses, we're going to get them the same as everybody else does. And then with the bonus skill proficiency, we're going to get it right here, the Bestial Instincts. Channeling the beast within, you have proficiency in one of the following skills of your choice: acrobatics, athletics, intimidation, or survival. So before you chose your subrace and it told you what your proficiency bonus was, now we get to choose between 4, so that's probably an improvement. Then we have Dark Vision, the same. So shifting, as a bonus action, you can assume a more bestial appearance. This transformation lasts for 1 minute until you die, or until you revert to your normal appearance using your bonus action. When you shift, you gain temporary hit points. It used to be equal to your level plus your Constitution modifier. Now it's 2 times your proficiency bonus. And of course, it used to say you gained additional benefits based on your shifter's subrace. Now it says whenever you shift, you gain an additional benefit based on one of the following options. Choose when you select the race. And it used to be once per short rest. Now it's proficiency bonus times per long rest. And there are 4 options. The first is Beast Hide, gives you a d6 additional temporary hit points, because remember, you get already getting temporary hit points, and you have a +1 bonus to your armor class. This one hasn't changed. It's exactly the same as it used to be. Then we have Longtooth. So what this one does is it gives you Fangs, which can do unarmed strikes. They do a d6 plus strength modifier, and you can attack with them using your bonus action. This one improves slightly. So it used to say, while shifted, you can use your elongated fangs to make unarmed strikes as a bonus action. And now it says, when you shift and as a bonus action on your other turns, while shifted, you can use your elongated fangs to make unarmed strikes. So the difference is, the turn you shift, you can now attack with them. Used to be that because you use your bonus action to shift, you would not be able to attack with your fangs on that round. So a little bit better. Next one is Swift Stride. So this one gives you a increase to walking speed of 10 feet, and you get a reaction you can do if somebody ends its turn within 5 feet of you. You can move 10 feet as a reaction. This one has not changed. And Wild Hunt. So well shifted, you get advantage on wisdom checks, and no creature within 30 feet of you can make an attack roll with advantage against you unless you're incapacitated. This one also hasn't changed. So actually not a lot of changes. But I'll tell you, it is definitely organized way better, way easier to follow. The shifter is probably the race I was least familiar with going into this, and reading through the new version, just really easy to follow. In fact, this is the second time I've recorded this, because the original shifter, I didn't understand how it worked properly, and then now I understand it perfectly. So I think they did a good job here. Next up, the Tabaxi. Okay, so still humanoid. Now we can be medium or small. Base walking speed of 30 feet, and the climbing speed is now equal to our walking speed. Used to be climb speed of 20, so that got a little bit better. Our cat's claws now do a d6 damage. They used to do a d4, and of course they're not considered weapons anymore. They're just unarmed strikes. Cat's talent is the same. Dark vision is the same. Feline agility is the same. Let's move on. Tortle. I was a little surprised to see Tortle in this book when I first heard it was there, but here it is, and you are still a humanoid. Now you can be medium or small. That was a bit of a surprise, because Tortles were normally described as like 450 pounds, 300 pounds even without the shell. Now they can be small-sized, so quite a difference there. Speed, 30 feet. Claws. So the claws now do a d6 damage, and they're now unarmed strikes. I never understood why they gave turtles claws in the first place. Do turtles have claws? Not to my knowledge. Do tortoises have claws? I think so, but like not attack claws. They're like, digging claws, aren't they? So it just seemed odd to me that they have like natural attacks with claws. But anyway, they're a little bit better. They're d6 damage now. Hold breath. So it used to kind of talk about you being underwater and being able to hold your breath. Now they just kind of make it simple. You can hold your breath for up to an hour. Doesn't need to be underwater. It can be anywhere. Natural armor is worded a little bit differently, but it ultimately, mechanically, it is unchanged. This also was something I thought they might change. They didn't. It is the same. Your armor class is 17. If you put on a shield, it's 19. And that's it. No dexterity, can't wear armor. Survival instinct is now called nature's intuition. Just a little bit of a flavor change, thanks to your mystical connection to nature. And it used to be just the survival skill. Now you can choose survival or stealth or perception or nature or medicine or animal handling. So quite a bit more flexibility there. And then shell defense is the same as it used to be. Onwards to the Triton. So they are humanoids, they're medium-sized, walking speed is 30 feet, swimming speed used to be listed as 30 feet, it's now equal to your walking speed. Amphibious is the same. Control air and water is different. You used to be able to cast Wall of Water, now you can cast Water Walk instead. We have the standard changes to casting in terms of slots and our ability score. One thing they do with Emissary of the Sea, though, is they add, it's not just beasts, it also includes elementals or monstrosities. So that's kind of interesting. And then Guardians of the Depths, they just add a little bit of flavor to it. Instead of saying the most extreme ocean depths, gives you resistance to cold damage. It's the frigid ocean depths gives you resistance to cold damage. A little more thematic, I guess. And then that brings us to our last race. That's the Yuan-Ti Pureblood. There is no more Yuan-Ti Pureblood. It is just the Yuan-Ti. Now the Yuan-Ti has gotten a little bit of a downgrade, and that's maybe a good thing because Yuan-Tis are often banned because they are probably a little overpowered. Now they're not overpowered anymore. But you know what? I still think they're good. So this is definitely a race I might choose. First, you can be medium or small. I think the reason for that is that officially, I think the Yuan-Ti, they're like humanoids, and then they do these rituals to kind of become Yuan-Ti. So what if you were a gnome and you did this ritual? Well, then you would become a small size Yuan-Ti. Speed is unchanged, dark vision unchanged. Magic resistance is now just spell resistance, still called magic resistance, but it doesn't affect other magical effects, just spells. Poison immunity, here's the big one. Poison immunity is changed to poison resilience, and basically you get the dwarf feature. So you have resistance to the damage of poison and advantage on saving throws against poison. And I just noticed this for the first time. It says you have advantage on saving throws you make to avoid or end the poison condition on yourself. You also have resistance to poison damage. I notice it doesn't say you have advantage on saving throws to resist the damage of poison, because all kinds of creatures, they'll do poison damage and then you make a saving throw to take half damage. The way this reads, this wouldn't apply, right? You have advantage on saving throws you make to avoid or end the poisoned condition on yourself. It's very specific. And then you have resistance to poison damage. And now I'm wondering, so if I read the dwarf, was it worded differently? Let me go back. All right, so I'm here on fighter. We're going to go back up, take a look here at dwarves. So go to races, dwarf. Dwarven resilience. You have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance to the poison damage. So this is actually worse than Dwarven Resilience. Now, the Duergar, was it worded the same? I bet you it was. I bet you it was. Let's go back up to the Duergar. So Duergar, here we are. Dwarven Resilience. You have advantage on saving throws you make to avoid or end the poison condition on yourself. And you have resistance to poison damage. So there you go, people. Here it is. Dwarven Resilience, or Poison Resilience. This is no longer giving you advantage on saving throws against the damage of poison. So yeah, that's a big change. I'd never noticed that. Just noticed it here as I'm recording. And then you know what? I'm sure I'm going to notice things after recording too. And you're going to point out stuff to me in the comments. But yeah, there's something I just noticed. It's worse than it used to be. And then we get innate spellcasting, is now called Serpentine spellcasting. We get the standard boosts here for spell slots and casting stat. So yeah, Yuan-Ti took some big hits, but you know what? Still good. Dark vision, magic resistance, even if it's just dispels. Poison resistance, even if it's just resistance. On top of that, we're getting innate spellcasting. Not a bad race at all. So those are all the races in Monsters of the Multiverse and the changes in those races. I want to thank the sponsor of this video, the Hobgoblin, who just gifted me this beautiful sponsorship. So thank you so much, the Hobgoblin. They weren't selling anything. They just like to give stuff away now because they're super nice. For now, I'm just going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.